Thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Nikki and I'm the sales manager here at MRDC Software. Just a brief background, MRDC Softwares offer a complete range of software solution for the market research and marketing industry. And today we are presenting the launch of Resolve Premium, presented by the founder of MRDC Software, Phil Hearn. And just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in your Zoom control panel, and I'll bring them up during the presentation or after the presentation, and we will also have time for questions at the end. And there will also be special offer available for those attending the webinar today, so which I will be announced at the end of this webinar. So just stay tuned and so now, without further ado, we will turn the time over to our presenter today. And our presenter today has been in market research for 40 years and formed the MRDC software in year 1992. And he really likes to travel and has visited over 50 countries and really a follower of several sports. So let me turn the time over to Phil. Hi, Phil.
Hi there. Thanks, Nikki. Thanks for the introduction there, and thanks for joining. And also, thank you for so many people joining today. I think this is a really high attendance at this webinar today. I think it's something like 90 people, which is very good indeed. I got the privilege today of introducing you to Resolve Premium. As you can see from the front slide, we're launching it today. The actual release date is just a month away now, on the 1st of June, and Nikki will be giving you some more details about that at the end. So let's just give you a little bit of background to what you can expect from today's webinar. Going to first of all start with a sort of quick overview of what Resolve is about, look at the base version, which has been around for about 9 months now, which I know some of the people attending today have already seen and are already using. So we're going to have a quick sort of reprise, if you like, of that, just to sort of perhaps to bring everyone up to a level who's attending this webinar today. Then I'm going to move on very quickly to looking at what's different and special about Resolve Premium and what makes it, in our view, a game changer. So we're going to be looking at both how it affects you as a business, as well as actually seeing the software itself in action and how you might apply it to your business, which I think is crucial here. I'm going to be talking about add-ins quite a lot today, and they're one of the sort of mainstays, or the mainstay, if you like, of Resolve Premium. And so I'm going to help you to understand what they are and why they give you so much power and give your clients so much power. We'll be looking at those in some detail. And I'll also be doing a very short technical bit on how they actually work. Now, I'm not going to go into detail on that today. That's for another session, really, for people who are more technically minded. I'm very aware today we've got a very wide audience. We've got people who I know run businesses. We've got people who manage data processing departments. We've got researchers here. And I know we've also got some end users of research here. So we've got a very mixed audience. So the technical bit, for those who are not technical, if they can perhaps look out the window just for 2 minutes while I cover that little section, they won't be too overawed by the technical bit, but I'm just doing a short piece on that for those who want to know sort of a bit more about how they work and how they might make Resolve add-ins themselves. But let's come back to that in a little while. So let's start with just an overview of what Resolve's about. As I said, Resolve Base has been around now for over 6 months, and primarily it's a tool to distribute projects to clients and colleagues so that your clients or your colleagues can produce tables and charts from a survey. And it's got in there tools to do crosstabs. You can filter those crosstabs. You can build new variables from the variables that are in the database for that particular project. And you can go on and make some charts that you can then use in presentations or wherever else you want to use them, in documents or whatever else. So it's a sense, if you like, you're packaging a project that's come out of MRDCL or QPS, and I'll explain that a little bit more in a second, and it allows you to, at the heart of it, to produce crosstabs, filter those crosstabs, and dive down into the data to find those sort of nuggets of information that are so valuable when you're handling a market research project. So that's sort of an overview of what it is. Some of our users and some of our customers who already exist will be aware of Reflect, and on the surface, Resolve looks like just a sort of, a minor upgrade to Reflect, and to some users that might be what it will be. That will be all it will be. So if you like the difference between Resolve Base, the version that has been around already for a while, and Reflect, is that Resolve Base is a little bit better organized. I'll give you a couple of examples of that. For example, if you've got a project with 500 variables, that can get quite difficult to manage in Reflect, whereas in Resolve, you can put them into groups so they're easy to find. You can choose favorites so that you can pick, or you have easily available the variables that you want to use regularly or more than once, and so on. So it's a little bit of an upgrade from that point of view on Reflect. It's got better connections to MRDCL, so it gives you a little bit more power than Reflect has, and it's also got a charting component, which I'm not going to spend much time on today. I will quickly show it to you in a minute, but I'm going to focus on really what the difference between Resolve Base and Resolve Premium is for the last 3 quarters of this presentation. And Resolve also has got an active development plan. Reflect hadn't really moved on for the previous 10 years or more, I would say. There are some active development plans and some development going on now, which will offer you new things in the coming year. And I'll just touch on those at the end of the presentation so you know what's coming next, as it were. So the process of supplying something in Resolve is that it has to pass through MRDCL or QPSMR so that you can make a Resolve file and distribute it to as many people as you want to. And for those who aren't clear about that, Resolve Base is a free product that if you convert the project or you put the project into Resolve Base, you can share that project with as many people within your organization or outside your organization without paying us any license fees whatsoever. So it's a freebie, in other words. So to get that data into MRDCL or QPS, the best ways, and probably the 2 most common ways, that if you're using a data collection platform, whether that be anything between, I don't know, SurveyMonkey right through to Confirmit or any other types of software out there for collecting data, MRDCL's got really excellent imports from both SSS and SPSS, and that's convenient as a way of getting your project into MRDCL so that you can distribute it in Resolve. Of course, you can use other data sources. Whether they're as easy will depend on the format of that data, whether there's ways of reading it in efficiently. I'm not going to cover that topic in great detail now. Suffice to say that often data just comes through from some of the lesser freer package or low cost packages as perhaps a CSV file, which means then you've still got to enter all the text so that variables are annotated when you put them into Resolve to distribute to clients or colleagues. So the best ways into Resolve effectively are from SSS and SPSS. If you haven't got an MRDCL or QPSMR license, at incredibly low cost, we can put projects into Resolve for you. When I say incredibly low, most projects, I would say that will be $50, $100, so that you can distribute it to as many people as you want to. A complex tracking study might be more than that, but many simple projects or basic ad hoc projects would go straight in for very little cost. So we're going to start with a quick demonstration of Resolve Base, just so everybody comes up to the level to see what has already been available in Resolve and to see what we built on and what Resolve Premium offers you over and above that. Now, just so that you're not confused by my face being on the screen twice a minute, I did actually record this video a little bit earlier today. So you're going to see me twice on the screen here. So the actual demonstration, this is live, but the demonstration actually is a recording that I made a little bit earlier, just to make sure I got it spot on. So I'm going to play that video now of a demonstration of Resolve Base. So let's start with a quick look at Resolve Base. Now actually I have opened up Resolve Premium here. What's different on the premium version to the base version is you get this extra menu here of add-ins, so that wouldn't be present on the base version. So let's open up the base version just to remind ourselves what that can do, or for anybody new to Resolve, so I can show you just a quick tour of what it does. So I'm going to open up a new project. I'm going to call it demo. Save it. Open up a project that's come, in fact, from MRDCL, and you can see I have a list of questions here that were on my questionnaire, and they're all pretty self-explanatory. The question numbers, gender, age at the top here, and some banners that were put together in analysis as well have come through to Resolve so that they can be used in analysis. And you might at first sight sort of think that Resolve is a little bit like Reflect, and indeed it is. The base version is quite like Reflect. So you get a list of questions here, and you've got some extra tools in Resolve so that you can pick some of these as your favorite, so it's a little bit easier to work with. So we could, for example, add some questions and make them our favorites, and then they can be in a sort of a pre-prepared list that you want to select from when you're producing tables, or you can also put them into groups as well so that you can handle the variables in groups. So let's just get stuck into the variables here. You'll see on this menu you can create variables and delete variables, or you can organize the variables into groups. Filters allows you to build some filters that you might want to use in your tables. But let's get sort of stuck into the producing some tables. So let's click on Create Reports, and let's just sort of do the simplest things that you can do in Resolve and just create a table here now. So you might want to, for example, pick age, click OK, go to the rows and pick question 2, which is the brands, and just click OK, run. We haven't got to save that definition. And we can look at those tables, and we could look at them in a text format. So we now get a list of the brands cross-analyzed by the 3 age groups in this survey, or we can look at them in a spreadsheet format, opening them in Excel, and you can see you've got them here now in a spreadsheet format that you can use. You do get this marker in column A as well, telling you what each row is in case you want to post-process them, but you can widen that and have some reasonable looking tables, and you could hide that column if you wanted to, so that that couldn't be seen, and we could delete that, and now you've got some quite easy to read tables. So that's sort of the basic things that Resolve will do for you. You'll see you've got some options across the top here. You've got rapid results and top line counts, which just give you more limited tables, so you've got less things to fill in down here. If we look around this screen, you can see there's more things that I can add. I did actually select these things from a menu here. You can just type in the question you want and type in question 3, and it will find it for you, so you haven't got to use the user interface, and that would now give me a table of question 3. You can apply filters here, so if you've got any predefined filters, you can just go and pick those, but I haven't got any predefined filters here, so I can just put one in on my own. So I can define that I want a filter. Let's say we want males only in this table, or to appear in this table, and now I can insert the definition as being gender male. Okay, and now it's applying the filter gender 1, which is males. And if I run that again very quickly and look at my output, you'll see that's dropped to 479 people from 830, I think it was, and the percentages now are based on just males, and I've got the same table out as before, but only for males. And I could look at that in a CSV file as I did before, and I can pick more than one question here. So I could, for example, go through and pick a number of questions, or indeed every single question if I wanted to, and when I run that, now rather than just one table, I'm getting a whole series of tables automatically coming out in one run. And it's a very fast piece of software, Resolve, so if you want to produce hundreds of tables from a survey, you could do just that. Now I can go a little bit further than this. Let's go back to just having one table. It's a little bit more manageable. So I can also have banners as well. So this has been pre-prepared. Someone set up some banners before they sent it here, so that I don't just get one question by the other. I get gender and age this time. And underneath Resolve, you'll find that MRDCL is running here, and that has huge power, which means that if you've got hundreds, thousands, even millions of records, it won't be a problem. If you've got 10,000 brands as the rows of your table that you want sorted in sequential order, it can do that. If you wanted thousands of columns on your table, it won't be a problem. So really, really huge limits. And that's perhaps where Resolve starts to pull away a little bit from a lot of the other tabulation software that's out there that does these quick and easy tables. There are no limitations, or very few limitations in MRDCL. You just won't hit them, whereas you might if you perhaps got 10,000 brands, for example, all the makes and models of cars that there are, for example, in the world. So that's looking at some of the basic things that you can do there. Now you can take this one step further. You can also start building your own variables here. So I've got a menu here called variables. So I could create a variable here. Let's call this gender underscore age. Whoops, I've got to underscore age. That would be single. And let's say we're going to give this a title of gender and age, and I'm going to put it into one variable. So here I could, if you like, insert a response, and I could define that as males. Okay, insert another definition, and I might want to group together a range of answers here, and I'm just using the shift key to pick two age groups. And I might want to edit that down so it reads a bit more easily, as 16 to 54. So I picked up males who are 16 to 54 by combining data from two questions together. And I might insert another response now, which again I want to pick males. And this time I want just the males who are 55 plus. And I don't want that word "and" in there, which it's helpfully putting in. And finally, I might want another response now. And let's, just to make it a little bit quicker, I could type this in. I could say gender 2, which is all the females together. So I'm not splitting the females, whereas the males I'm splitting into two groups. So you get a feel for how quick that is to build your own variables. I can save that, and you'll now see down the bottom here, if I widen that column, I've now got that new variable gender age. And let's do something else with the variable now. Let's take question 2. So I'm going to build another variable now. I'm going to call it my Q2 summary of Q2. And this time I'm going to block insert the responses from question 2. There they all are. So there's the 5 responses. But perhaps I'd like a subtotal of anybody who said either of these first codes. So I could insert a response here, and either of brands of brands 1 or 2. And I could insert that definition as question 2, and I'll just pick up these first 2 brands here. There we go, pick them up. Okay, and I've got a subtotal now of the people who picked either of those first 2 brands. Click OK, and you'll see now, if I save that again, I've got my Q2 at the bottom. which now means that I can go into a report and produce a table. So I can now, for example, in my columns, I could select that variable while I put the gender and ages together, and in the rows I could pick my version of question 2 and I could run that. I'm not going to save it, process it, view the table, and now you can see I've got the people who put either of those 2 brands, and I've got my males split between the 2 age groups so that I've got that summarized, because actually it's showing me quite different data down here for the 2 age groups. So that looked like quite an interesting split on the table. And I can take this all one step further. I can actually go on and create charts from this data. So if I wanted to perhaps produce a chart, let's go and do that. I'm just going to pick a couple of options here to make sure that the chart looks good. And I'm going to run it again. And so we've got both a table here coming out and a chart as well alongside it, which we could obviously copy paste or push through into PowerPoint, whichever we wanted. And I could have set my own title here as well. So you've got an idea of what the Resolve can do for you. Now let's take a look at some of the other things about Resolve Premium. All right, so it was really just an introduction of Resolve Base, just to sort of see what it looks like, you know, the basic things. Everything you're going to see about Premium, of course, is additional to that. I didn't show you everything there by any means. I didn't show you all the chart styles. You've got a whole library of chart styles that you can use. I just picked the default chart style. I didn't show you the fact you can do multiple filters. I didn't show you any of the 250 options you've got for statistics, decimal places, layout of the table, and all sorts of things. So what you saw there, if you like, was the basics of the base version, if you like, rather than really putting it through its paces. But I just wanted to give you that little bit of insight, just to prepare you to take you on, if you like, to the next level of what's different about Resolve Premium. And we're now just talking from here on in about Resolve Premium and what's different and what's special about it. I think the first thing to say is, and it's, I think, probably an unmatched claim by anybody else actually who's got user-friendly software like this, that there's no limits to the complexity analysis that you can handle. You know, there's a good reason for that the MRDCL engine is running underneath that, and that can do anything in terms of tables, and that in turn means now that what we're doing with Resolve Premium is giving you access to that power in a way that I don't think any other software does on the planet. So what that means in terms of practicalities, well, it doesn't only mean that complex analysis can be done through Resolve Premium. It also means that things that are just repetitive and boring can be done as well. So I don't know if you've ever tried to use any of the basic tabulation packages that are out there, and I know there's hundreds of them on the market now, but certainly tens of them anyway. But for example, if you've got a rating scale and you've got 50 of them, and you want to put in a top box and a top 2 box and a bottom 2 box, and apply that to all 50 variables, and then get a summary table of those 50 questions or rating statements, that can be quite a laborious task, either impossible, perhaps laborious, or easy to get wrong and make mistakes. With Resolve Premium, as we'll see, you can do that through very, very simple interface that makes that automatic for you, and that will all start to become clear over the next half an hour. It means also, Resolve Premium, that you can have your own calculations and proprietary analyses. I know there's even some people on this this call here now who do some interesting analysis with brands, where they build tables and calculations to give brand scores. That can all be built into Resolve Premium so that your clients could use that in their own analysis. They could then perhaps filter on different age groups, for example, to drill down into the data and be using your proprietary calculations or analysis. So there's some tools that you can build for yourself here that enable and empower your clients to do what you perhaps do at maybe a total level, but then allow them to analyze that in more depth. So again, offering more power than anyone else does. And you will get some real productivity gains. That's one thing that I think is perhaps a different angle for Resolve Premium, that it actually opens up a different way of working. And I want to sort of just talk about that a little bit at the moment, because I think that with many companies get set in the ways that they handle research projects or the analysis from research projects, and have one size fits all, as they say, where they just process every project in the same way. And that might suffer at both ends of the spectrum. So it might be that they're using a powerful scripting language like MRDCL to do their analysis, but that actually that's too heavy a tool to do some of the simple work. And at the other end of the spectrum, there's people perhaps struggling with some of the more basic software that's out there. And then when it becomes complicated, that becomes quite difficult or perhaps even impossible to achieve the analysis that you really want. Now, what Resolve Premium does is it gives you choice. It means that if you've got a project where perhaps 90% of the work is very simple, the variables and the questions on the question are very simple, but there's just a few variables that are quite complex that somebody who's an expert in handling survey analysis needs to build, they can do that and then pass the project on in Resolve Premium for someone, perhaps a researcher, to delve into the data and produce the analysis themselves. So perhaps that works on a particular project or on a certain type of project or types of project. So it gives you this choice on how you approach your data processing, whether you put it in the hands of an expert, perhaps in doing data processing, somebody who's quite junior because it's perhaps an online survey of only 10 questions where it doesn't need anything very powerful, or perhaps that you have a mix of the two so that the project is, perhaps half handled by experts, but half passed to someone else to do the analysis and the reporting and the researching. So it really does open up some possibilities and choice on how you approach things, and you can make that choice on a project by project basis rather than just having one system that will have inefficiencies. It does mean, as I said just now, that it makes complex tasks simplified. So if there's anything that you're doing that's repetitive and is either just repetitive and perhaps prone to error, but not very difficult, or just complex in itself, you can simplify that. Resolve Premium will let you do that so that the whole thing can be automated. And it's just de-skilling a whole lot of tasks that people find quite laborious or, just takes up a lot of staff time to prepare. So the question is, how does Resolve do this? And I alluded to it in the beginning when I talked about add-ins. And just to sort of clarify that, other software does call them plugins. We've called them add-ins. We're not trying to be different, but add-ins and plugins, I think, are pretty much the same thing. But what it means is that you can have little snippets of code that are special to you that make your work more efficient and make your processing efficient and give you, your team and your clients what it is they want. So let's go a little bit further with that and see what an add-in is. Well, as a definition, I would say it's a friendly user interface to produce any analysis you may want. Now, that little bit of claim there, any analysis you may want, might sound like an overclaim, but it isn't. It is any, yes, any. It means because you've got MRDCL sitting underneath Resolve Premium and MRDCL can do any tabulations that you want, you have the ability with Resolve Premium to build that bridge or have that bridge so that you can produce whatever you want and what's more efficiently. So how does it work? Let's have a little think about that now. So as I've mentioned a few times, it's using the MRDCL engine. And what actually happens is that a user interface can be built with a scripting language that in turn activates the MRDCL scripting language. Now, I'll just say that once more. It means that you, using a scripting language, can build an interface that means menus will pop up, as we'll see in a second, and I'll bring it to life in a moment, which then in turn drives MRDCL script to produce what you want. Okay, that didn't make sense. Let's look at it in a little bit more detail. First of all, how do we make add-ins and how do I get hold of add-ins? Well, the first thing to say is that we have something like 20 add-ins that you can just download, and they cover many of the common things that you will encounter that can be difficult, certainly in other software, but you can also adapt for your own needs. So not only can you download these 20 add-ins that we have already, you, for example, can customize them slightly to do something slightly different. And that isn't particularly difficult. If you've got anyone in your team who's got MRDCL experience or wants to watch any of our videos, you can make, if you like, minor changes or different versions of that, of those add-ins quite easily to suit your particular needs. So we've done perhaps more generic add-ins that are generally useful, but you might want to make them more specific or have two variants of it, for example, so that it does something more specific to your particular business. So that's the sort of first type of add-ins, downloadable and ones that you edit and save as effectively. You can build your own add-ins from scratch. So there is a way of building your own add-ins so that you will build a user interface that can be used in Resolve Premium that you can then, if you want, distribute to any of your clients or your researchers or anyone within your company so that they can use an add-in that you've built that does whatever it is you want it to do. And remembering MRDCL can do anything when it comes to tabulation. So you can build an add-in that does exactly what you want. And if you want an add-in that you want us to make for you, they're very easy for us to make. I don't think there's many add-ins that you could come up with if you wanted to contract us to build them that would cost much more than $200, and I think probably most would cost about $50. So if you haven't got the time or the ability or the skills in-house to do it, or you don't want to learn, you could probably contract us for not much to make 3 or 4 add-ins that done something that was important to you or saved you a lot of time or reduced errors or meant that your clients could access something in your data that they weren't perhaps previously able to. So there's some different ways of working there. Let's look at some examples of add-ins. Let's get a bit more specific now. So add-ins cut across everything, if you like, in the survey analysis process. They apply to tables, variables, the data that you're actually processing, detailed options. And so I mean by that, if you want a standard error that's got 3 decimal places, for example, you could build an add-in that let that be settable, for example. And of course, as I mentioned before, it means you can have custom formulae, any calculations that are proprietary, any particular brand analyses that you have for your own organization that you use for clients, anything pretty much. Let's look at those in a little bit more detail now to give some examples of each of those so you understand what I'm talking about. So when it comes to tables, for example, you might want to have some particular summary tables that you like to produce. We have some add-ins actually that we provide that do summary tables, and I think we show you one in a little while. You might want some mean score summaries. You might want to rank those mean score summaries. Who can say what you want to do? You'll be able to have an add-in that will do exactly what you want. And that can go on to do things like, I know many of our clients have fixed questionnaires for top of mind, spontaneous, brand recall, prompted, and you might want some automatic variables generated there. People who have seen a brand advertised but have heard of it, but not seen advertising, for example. So building variables perhaps from different questions there, and they could be automatically generated very, very quickly with 1 or 2 clicks using an add-in. So that's the sort of things you can do with tables. When it comes to variables, you might want to combine variables together in some way. You might want to have top, bottom, two boxes, things like that. You might want to relabel the variables, because when you push figures through to charts, sometimes the texts need to be quite concise so that they look good on a chart. Otherwise, they get truncated in things like PowerPoint. So there's various things that you might want to do to variables to build variables automatically for you. And then data, there's all sorts of things you might want to do with data. You might want to apply rim weighting, target weighting. You might have your own method of weighting. You might want to have pre-weights with rim weights and target weighting. However complex that is, you'll be able to do it with an add-in. You might want some complex data filtering. You might want to exclude certain records, for example, have a tool that lets you choose which records are used in a particular analysis. You might want to clean data. So you might have some data that you've got in from your data collection software, and you actually want for certain records to change data because it was wrongly answered or had illogical answers, for example. You might want to produce reports and lists in Excel. You might want to customize that list. I know already somebody's asked us if we can actually put out figures to specific cells in a spreadsheet using an add-in, and the answer is yes. You could build an interface that allowed you to pick off figures in tables so that you were able to drop them into particular cells in a spreadsheet. So really sort of specific custom things that you might want to do that no other software will offer, because nobody else or very few other people want to do exactly what you want to do. You can have that. And you get detailed, you can play with and have detailed output options. So you can have significance tests. I think we've got about 6 different flavors of significance tests now that are used around the world with subtle differences. Things like medians, choosing whether you suppress small values and small bases, all those sort of detailed things you can control for yourself. And as I've mentioned a few times, custom formulae, of course, can be applied as well. So when I say anything, I probably almost literally mean anything. All right, so we're going to look at 3 examples of using an add-in in a demonstration in a second. Then I'm going to go on and look at how you can customize an add-in. That's the sort of technical bit. I'm not going to spend long on that because it is a much sort of heavier area, and I don't think that suits all of this audience here. Certainly people who are interested in that area, we can help them separately and ensure that they get what they're trying to do. So let's have a demonstration then of Resolve Premium, just look at some of the things you can do then. This is again a video I recorded a little bit earlier, so I'm not live for this, but we'll just go on and have a look at that now. Okay, so let's look at some of these add-ins working in practice here and see how you might use them. And you can see I've opened up the same project as I did earlier. And this time I'm going to go into the add-ins menu. And when you click on that, you can see the list of add-ins that you have available. And I guess they break down into different areas. So you'll see some at the top here, which are sort of variable based or variable generation. So they don't actually produce any tables. They just generate variables for you that you can use in tables or as filters at a later stage. So just to take 1 or 2 examples here, there's one here that's called add top boxes and or bottom boxes. So that would allow you for rating scales, for example, to choose top 2 boxes for very good and quite good, for example, and you can have both top 2 boxes and bottom 2 boxes, or top 3 boxes and bottom 3 boxes, and you can position those at the top of the variable or at the end of the variable and choose how you show that. So there's some various options that you can build into these add-ins. They're not fixed in how you might use them. In a minute, we're going to use the one that does what's called dot by dot variable. So that would do, for example, age within gender, to make all of the different age groups within the gender in a new variable for you, just with a couple of very simple selections. And then moving down here, you come into some options or add-ins that will do different types of tables for you. So There's some summary tables here that we'll use one of those in a minute, so you can get a summary perhaps of some rating scales again. Here you can see there's one that does RIM or target weighting and applies that to the project for you. There's a tool in here for cleaning data, so that if you want to amend the data for individual records, you can do that. You can list data out to a CSV file. And there's things like utilities here where you can relabel texts in variables, so that, for example, if you want more concise texts on a chart where the text is perhaps a little bit too wordy to appear in a chart or look good on a chart, you can just redefine your labels so that they come out differently to what they might do from the original database that you're working on. So I'm going to start by using the dot by dot variable one. So let's click on that. And I'm going to pick here that I want to do gender. And I'm going to pick question 3 here, which is the last occasion they rode a bicycle. And I don't want any more variables. I'm going to call this gender underscore Q3. It's a multi, and I'm going to call it Q3 within gender as my title. Okay, do I want to save it? Yes, I do. Save it to my project. So I've saved it now permanently, and now if I want to use that in a table, I can just create reports as usual. Pick my columns, and let's go for banner, and my rows just like before here, using that new variable gender underscore Q3. Save the table definition. No, I don't need to save it, just run it. Have a look at the table, and you can see down here I've got the males within each of those categories for recency of riding a bicycle, and then it comes to the females, and you would expect it, of course, to be split between the males and females here, but you can now see the split within age as well. So that's using a dot by dot variable. The next thing I'm going to do, have another look at another add-in now. I won't save that table. Okay, is to look at another add-in. Let's look at one that does RIM weighting, for example. So let's click on RIM weighting. You can see there's an option 1 for RIM weighting, 2 for targets. I'm going to choose RIM weighting here. And I'm going to pick gender and age for my targeting. And in here, I'm going to pick, let's say, 40% males, 60% females, 40% in the first age group, 40 in the second, and 20 in the last age group. And the tables I want to generate from that, I'm just going to pick questions 1 to 3 and analyze those by banner. And sure enough, now you can see I've got weighted data in here. There's a weighted line underneath the unweighted line. And now the females have jumped from 352 to 499, which is 60%. And the age groups you can see here are 40%, 40%, and 20%. So it looks like our RIM weightings worked. And we've got now a series of tables using that RIM weighting. And again, I could view that as a CSV file or whatever else I wanted to do with it as a post process. So that's doing the work on those 2 add-ins. Now let's look at one more just to give you a sort of feel for it. I'm going to do a summary table now. So I'm going to do a summary table, and you can see here I've got these rating scales here, Q71 or _1 to _5. Let's put those into a summary. Go down here, let's click on them, click OK. I could edit the text if I wanted to these to perhaps shorten the text so they're a bit more concise, but I'm going to carry on. I'm going to call this Q7 summary and click OK. And hopefully that's produced me a summary table. Now I could have edited those texts so they're a bit more readable because it's getting the full text, but you can see now just as a couple of clicks I've got a summary table of 5 different rating statements side by side, And of course, I could have shown that the different way, and I've got on the bottom here a mean score. And we could obviously have shown more statistical options there, like standard deviation and error variance and so on. So that's sort of showing you around three variables there, or sorry, three types of add-ins there. I'll just quickly do one more. Let's get the same codes from a series of variables. So let's work again on that question 7 where there were some rating scales. So this time I'm going to pick the same questions again. There they are, question 7. Do I want to edit the variable text? No, I'm going to leave them as they are. But I'd like to put together anybody who said very likely or quite likely for each of the statements into one variable. So this will make one variable. Click OK. We'll give it a name. We'll call it Q7 sum as a shorthand for summary. Q7 very stroke quite likely. Click OK. I want to save that variable, so you can now see again Q7 sum has appeared at the bottom there, and now I can use that to create a report. So again, I'm going to pick some columns. I'm going to pick banner 1 as I seem to use that most of the time. Q7 sum, and I'm going to run that. And you can see the table I've got. I could again have shortened those texts, but for time, I've got a summary here of the people who said very or quite likely to each of those 5 statements. And I've got that analysed by gender and age. And of course, I could go on and make a chart of that or whatever I wanted to do with it. And I could have viewed it, of course, as a CSV file here. So I could, again, in the earlier example, just like Resolve Base. So that's sort of taking us through looking at some add-ins there. I'm now going to close this and go back to my presentation. Okay, so that was an example that was running sort of 4 add-ins that we actually distribute free, but they can all be amended. I'm going to take you on to just the technical bit very quickly now, and this is perhaps, as I say, people who are non-technical, who just want to use Resolve for a purpose, probably won't want to read this, but this is actually what is driving those add-ins. So this is actually that last one that we saw, I think, there, which was making, just page down by mistake, but this is the one that was making, I think, the last one that we saw there, which was taking those codes. And you can see what's set up here. At the top here, there's some commands. There's a name, there's a title, there's a block, it's a tab only add in this particular one. But these are the 3 lines that determine what the interface looks like. So by learning how to use these assign statements, this is the key to it all. These put up the respective menus with the respective restrictions. So just now, this particular one here, it's getting the variables and it's expecting to select at least 2 variables, but no more than 100. That's an arbitrary limit, by the way. We just think that 100 was enough there. And we're restricting it to single and multi-variables, and they can pick as many as they like of that 2 to 100. And so you can see this is just and there's a prompt saying select 2 to 100 variables. So this is just, if you like, a string of commands that are going to assign to a value R1 and put up a form so that you collect that through your own interface that you've made, if you wish, the data that you want so that you can process it. And we've got another one here which picks up something else, and another one which is just picking up a table title. So that's a simple one. And so having picked up these bits of information as R1, R2, R3, they then get applied as script into MRDCL script. I've gone slightly too far. So you can see down here, they're referenced as R1. You can see R2 down the bottom. And if I scroll on, I can see R3 is called in here. So that's where the text we can probably, let's just follow that one because that's probably the easiest one there. So assign R3 is prompting the user to enter a table title. That's all, nothing else. It's just to input a table title. And you can see that particular table title is assigned in there in the MRDCL script. Now, what that means when you come to run it, for those who are more familiar, is it will generate this sort of script, which in turn is running that particular table, which we saw in the demonstration. That I think that was the, I can't remember, the second or the third of the examples that was shown just now. But it was through those steps. So if we go back through those steps, the first step was that the add-in was set up, the add-in was obviously tested. That information is collected, then it's processed by MRDCL. That's all hidden behind the scenes of Resolve Premium. And that's what you saw just now in the demonstration, that resultant table. So that's a very quick demonstration, if you like, of how the add-in works and what's going on behind the scenes, without getting perhaps too tied up in the technicalities, but just enough to perhaps make it a bit clearer to you. So what's coming next in Resolve Premium? I did promise at the beginning I'll tell you what the roadmap looks like for development. There's going to be improved chart production, so there will be full chart automation so that you can link through anything you want to from Resolve Premium straight through to a PowerPoint presentation, so that you can automate your PowerPoint presentations or produce multiple PowerPoint presentations. That's already in development. That will not be available till probably either very end of this year or early next year, but it's certainly in development. So that will be the next sort of major upgrade, if you like, to Resolve Premium. There'll be some report automation so that you can set up automated reports. You'll be able to set up templates so that you can get it to run certain reports automatically. That's probably most applicable to people who are running tracking studies where they just want to automate some particular analysis that they've run before or had before. And of course, there'll be more customizable interfaces. The setting up of add-ins will have a bit more customization in there and a bit more automation in there. So there's a definite roadmap in there. So let's come back to that initial question, or that additional point I made that I cited at the very beginning, that I suggested that Resolve Premium is a game changer. And I think it is a game changer. I think there's something there for a lot of different people. It maximizes productivity. Now, that perhaps doesn't interest everybody about being maximizing productivity, but I'm sure it interests business owners out there who want their staff to be as productive as possible. So it does maximize productivity, or if it doesn't, it certainly makes a move towards maximizing productivity. It means the right person can be doing the right work. So if it makes sense that a researcher does most of the tables on a particular project, that's enabled. If it's a complex project that the DP team do most of it, you can do that, but it just gives you that choice, whether it's a joint effort or individual people, or indeed you just ship the project to the client for them to explore themselves. You really open up some flexibility in there. And of course, it means that you can share data amongst clients very, very easily. And you can determine at what level you share that data. So if you're sharing a project with a client, for example, you might not want to give them the 30 add-ins that you may have developed, for example, the ones that we've developed plus the ones you might have added. You might only want to give them 5 of them because they might not understand the others, or they might produce data that might confuse them, or they might misuse. So you can share as much or as little as you want to and give them and empower them as far as you think is appropriate to meet their needs. You can reuse skilled work. I think this is something that's it's one of my sort of general thoughts about market research. Generally, we find it very hard to reuse things that we do in surveys. Every survey tends to be different, and so we often start from scratch when we're designing a questionnaire through to doing analysis. This helps a little bit. I don't say it solves the problem entirely, but it certainly helps a bit in allowing you to reuse skilled work that takes time. So you can make an add-in that will automatically do something for you from one project to the next. And I think it simplifies a lot of complex and time-consuming tasks. I do believe that the 80-20 rule does apply to a lot of data processing, a lot of data analysis, where sometimes 80% of the time is spent just doing 20% of the work. And it is important we try and get that figure to be somewhat more attractive. And it is a low-cost piece of software. We're without the offers you're going to hear about shortly from Nikki. Resolve starts at 400 GB pounds per year for a license, and with discounts that are quite big if you have multiple licenses, with other things thrown in, some help with add-ins and so on. So there's some real benefits of using it, and I'm sure that I said something for everybody in here. I think perhaps the finance director will like that particular one. And of course, at £400 or GB pounds, that's significantly cheaper than a lot of other products out there, which don't have this flexibility and power, which are several times more expensive. And I suppose if you have design skills and you're creative, you really could and can, with Resolve Premium, design your own crosstab package, and that's not too big a claim to make. You can put in as much complexity as you want to your version of Resolve Premium, and you can enable your customers to have that, or as little as that as you think is appropriate, and different members of your staff. So you really can build your own crosstab package and actually customize that for different users as well. So when I say there's something for everyone, I really think there is something for everyone. So at that point, I'm going to hand back to Nikki and see if there's any questions that have come in. And I can see there are some, so I'll get her to get through the questions, and we'll get through as many as we can in the next 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. We'll go ahead now and take some time for questions. So the first question I have here, we have few questions here. Making an add-in looks difficult. Do you offer free support?
Good question. Add-ins isn't that difficult. They're difficult the first time you do them. There aren't actually that many commands to learn. So once you've built one add-in, you'll find doing the second one a lot easier, and the third one even easier still. So they're not quite as difficult as they look, but we don't offer free support for them. We'll certainly help you if you've got one odd one, and we obviously, if you're going to buy a lot of licenses, we would help you a bit more because there'll be some money in the budget to do that. But there'll be videos that will help you build these yourself, and I'm sure if you just want one that's not quite working as you want, we'll help you out. But we're not there to write them for you. If you want us to do them for you, we will charge for it. But they're not quite as difficult as you think. I think once you've done one, you can probably do another one with a lot more ease. But you do need a bit of MRDCL knowledge to do certainly some of the complex ones. So yeah, you might need some training if you've got really big ambitions.
Yeah, great. Another question here. You talk about the choice of how you handle each project, right? Can the work you carry out in Resolve be available in MRDCL?
Yes. Okay. So yes, I get what you're saying. So if you've used an add-in or done anything in Resolve and you have an MRDCL license, the code that would be generating is available. It's sitting there. I could show it on my screen, but I won't change Windows now. But yes, that script is available. So then you could take it and use it in MRDCL however you wanted to. And indeed, actually, you could use the add-ins as well as MRDCL script, because that's all that Resolve Premium is doing, is actually collecting information from you through a user interface and plugging that in using parameters within MRDCL. So yes, anything you produce in Resolve, you could just transfer into MRDCL very easily.
Yeah, great. And Phil, can you distribute a project to some people using a free license and some using the premium license?
Yes, full stop. Yes. What license anybody uses to deliver your project. So you can build a project, you can deliver it, and which license, whether you give them the free license or the paid for license, the premium license, would be your choice, and that same project would work in both licenses. Obviously, in the premium license, they'd have access to more than they do in the base license. But yes, no
Mm-hmm.
problem.
Okay. Another question is I have data in SPSS. How can I deliver that in Resolve?
Okay, this is quite interesting. I know someone's already contacted us about something similar here, where they have a project in SPSS and they want to deliver it, I think, to 70 different people around the world. And it seemed that the base version would do for 30 or 40 of those users, and I think 30 or 40 would benefit from something with a bit more power and a bit more flexibility. And so, yes, that's quite easy to do. We can import that project into MRDCL and drop it into Resolve so that it can be distributed to people in either the Resolve base version or the premium version. As I said, if you haven't got an MRDCL or a QPS license, we can do that for you. And most projects that would be, $100 to do. So you need to add $100 to the cost of your premium licenses. But I think we have an offer that if you buy enough premium licenses, we do a certain number of projects for you automatically free of charge. So you don't need an MRDCL license then. But yes, that would work very well. Importing, perhaps I should say this, I'm going off a slight tangent here, but we put in a big upgrade to MRDCL at the end of 2020, beginning of 2021, which has a very sophisticated import from SPSS, because SPSS doesn't necessarily organize variables very well, particularly when they're multi-response questions. But we put in an interface into MRDCL that makes that very efficient now, so that it imports them very tidily into MRDCL, so that in turn means they can be distributed effectively in Resolve. So that would work very well, yeah. So SPSS to Resolve is quite an easy step.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so another question here is, do you get full access to MRDCL format option in Resolve add-in?
Yes, you could. The MRDCL's got about 250 options, I think, from percentage in types, decimal places, statistical options, you name it. You can use all of those. Oh, I suppose the only exceptions would be ones that apply to reading data, because the data's already inside. So there's something like 10 options out of those 250, maybe even less, that control the reading of data, whereas they're just not applicable in here in Resolve Premium, because the data is already built into the database. But yes is the straight answer. My initial answer was yes anyway. So yes, all the options you've got for tabulations and reporting are available. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And last question I have, I think, how do clients learn how to use add-ins we provide?
Okay, I think most of them are actually completely intuitive. I mean, I think, and I haven't been through them all enough to check this, so I think we'll check this before we go any further. But it's easy to supply a video that just explains what they are. I think all of our add-ins are intuitive. If that's not true, we would certainly produce a video for it. We haven't done that yet, but we would do. My advice would be, if you're making your own add-ins, that if they're intuitive, you don't need to. But if they're if they're applying some magic formulae behind the scenes that only you are going to understand or know, it would make sense to produce a short video to explain what's going on. So if you're doubling all the figures and then dividing them by 23 for some reason, and no one's got any reason to expect that, it will be a good thing, I think, to tell the person that's using the add-in that's what's going on. I think all our add-ins are obvious, but we would certainly produce short videos of a couple of minutes if they need it to make them comprehensible.
Okay, I'm not sure if you can, because we have still two questions here.
Okay.
Um, The last question, I think. After you create the rim or target weighing within the add-in, how can export the weigh value per respondents to CSV file?
Um, you'd have to do that within the add-in. That's very easy to do. It would need one line of code in the add-in so that it automatically done that. So that's a good example. I think one of the things I mentioned in the presentation was you can not only take our add-ins that we supply, you can take them and amend them slightly. So you could amend the add-in that we supplied and add in one line of code, which also dropped all of the weights for each respondent or whatever it is you wanted into a spreadsheet or a CSV file. And the add-in then for you would do that. So you could very easy to do that. Really good example. Thank you for that. Almost a really good example of how you can take a generic add-in that we've supplied and you want to add one little feature to it. Yeah, that could all be done. Absolutely fine.
Okay, so it's look like we've covered off all our questions. I have here the last question, but I think I can answer this. So the last question, are we going to get any trial copy of this premium version to play around with? So this is now the special offer today. So there will be a free 1 month trial of Resolve Premium sent out after the webinar. So in your email addresses that is registered. So there will also be a recording of the webinar that will send as well. And the offer earlier that I mentioned is a special offer for those attending this webinar. You'll be getting a 50% discount off the first 3 buyers, that regardless of whether they buy 1 license or 1,000 licenses. Also, you can register interest before 1st of June release date. So our release date is 1st of June, and you can get 25% discount for anyone attending the webinar. So like what Phil mentioned earlier, the prices start at GBP 400 for 1 license with generous discounts per volume. You can also check full price on our website on the Resolve product page at www.mrdcsoftware.com. And you can also email me if you have any further questions and you wanted to know more about Resolve at nikki.sunga@mrdcsoftware.com. That is on our screen now. Yeah. So that's all we have for our question today. So Phil, is there anything else you wanted to cover before we wrap up this call?
No, I think we're good for now. Thank you everyone for attending today. It's been a very good attendance today. I hope everyone gets a lot out of Resolve Premium and it's been a pleasure being here today. Thank you.
Great. So with it today, thank you everyone. We will just send out the free 1 month trial Resolve Premium and then the recording of the webinar on your email address that is registered. We appreciate you being here. Thanks again for joining us today, and we will see you next time. Bye bye.
Bye.